Hello friends, it's a pleasure to connect with all of you today on this session for Smart India Hackathon. I am Rajesh Kode and I work as a user experience architect for persistent systems. A very warm welcome to this introductory session on user experience design. I know most of you are preparing for Smart India Hackathon and all of you are techies, but I am sure you are going to get the value for your time through this session because I am going to discuss a very important aspect of a product, which is user experience design. Through this session, you are going to learn how you can elevate the experience of your hackathon solution. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy this session. At high level, the agenda that I am going to cover today goes like this. We are going to discuss what is user experience and why should we care about it in the first place. We will understand the process of creating user experiences and we will learn the elements of user experience which will give us a good conceptual model to analyze any interface. I am also going to share design principles and practices that you can apply to your solution right away. This session is not about UI development technology or any design tool. This is more fundamental as it is about design itself. Hope this sounds exciting to you. Folks, think about the last time you visited a bank. Of course, not during the demonetization period. So, when you entered the bank, what was the first impression? Was it easy to find the counter that you were looking for? Did you understand the forms that they gave you? How much time did it take to complete your transaction? How was the waiting experience? Was someone there to guide you? Well, answers to these questions, including your emotional highs and lows, tells us about the user experience that this bank offered you. Now let's apply the same analogy to a digital product. Suppose you need to book a flight ticket on a travel booking web portal. You have heard about this new portal and you want to try it out. So when you visit it, what is your first impression? Do you clearly understand the categories it offers you? Do you easily get the starting point to book your tickets? Is it easy to find the travel destinations and select the travel dates? How many clicks or steps are required to book tickets? And at the end of it, do you get a feeling about grabbing a good deal on this portal and feel like recommending it to your friends or coming back next time yourself? Answers to these questions tells us about the user experience of this travel booking portal. Friends, it's all about experience. User experience is not about the inner working of a product or service. User experience is about how it works on the outside when a person comes into the contact of a product. It's an outside in perspective of a product against inside out, which is a technology perspective. So, when someone asks you how does it feel to use any product or service, they are actually asking about its user experience. After all, every product made for humans has a user, and every time a product is used, it delivers an experience. So, why should we care about user experience? How is it relevant to us? Actually, the answer is quite simple. How many of you use Gmail? And how many know the backend technology that it uses? Not many, right? So, for users, user interface is the product. You might write a very powerful backend code, but if your users don't understand the interface, they won't use it. If your product is difficult to use, it can have some serious business impacts. It might result into low conversion rate or revenue loss for some B2C application, or can result into reduced productivity and efficiency of employees for some B2B application. If a product is complex, it can increase the training and support cost for businesses. Depending on the kind of product you have, these impacts may change. On the contrary, if you have a great experience, if your product gives a great experience to users, it can become a key to its success. That's why you will find digital leaders like Apple, Google, Airbnb and many more, provide immense importance to user experience. I can say that successful user experience is the common factor in all winning products. But folks, user experience doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be engineered into your product development process. You need to take conscious efforts to make your product user friendly. So, if you like any digital product and if it offers you a pleasurable and easy to use experience, there are high chances that it has gone through a very structured design process. And there was a team of multidisciplinary professionals who were involved in the product development process right from the beginning. With this context, now let's get some more understanding about user experience design. Let's start with a bit of a history. On the left, we have a picture of Xerox Alto. I must say that Xerox Alto in 1972 was the first system to introduce the concept of graphical user interface, an intermediate layer that connects users with the backend technology. The Alto greatly influenced the design of personal computers in next 10-20 years. On the right, we have the advertisement of first Macintosh in 1984. Just notice the caption. It says, "A funny thing happens when you design a computer everyone can use." So, Apple had an intent to design a personal computer that everyone should be able to use. For this, they invested huge amount of efforts and of course their vision to elegantly simplify its interface so that everyone can use it. They truly leveraged the user experience as a strategic differentiator to generate huge value. A parallel example we can consider is the evolution of mobile phone. Do you know that the first mobile call was made around 44 years back? The call was made by a Motorola engineer, Martin Cooper. Cooper actually mentioned that people were stunned when they saw the cordless brick-like phone in his hand. Today, we enjoy very slick, well-designed versions of mobile phones with thousands of applications which are very easy to use. It has literally transformed the way we live and do everyday things. But why am I discussing all these things? The reason why I am discussing this to make a point that the user experience has evolved over the years with technology, and it has played a very important role in making technology adopted easily by masses. So, after a bit of a history, let's understand what user experience design is. Well, Wikipedia defines user experience as emotions and attitudes about using a particular product or system, or it can be a service. It covers various aspects of human computer interaction. So, user experience is a very broad term. To simplify this further, it covers all the aspects of person's experience of interacting with a product or service. The way it feels to use, the way it works, the way it gets perceived, and the way it serves the purpose. Actually, it's about everything. It was Don Norman, who coined the term user experience and brought it to the wider audience. He is a thought leader and an author of number of amazing books on user experience. He thought human interface or user interface and usability were too narrow. He wanted to cover all aspects of person's experience with the system. That's why the term user experience. It's not just limited to websites and mobile apps. If you look around, we are surrounded by a number of interfaces that we interact with every day. Yes, it could be an app that you are using on your mobile. It could be the chair on which you are sitting right now. It could be an experience of using a TV remote to change the channel, or it could be an experience of withdrawing money from ATM. Every day we interact with number of interfaces, and user experience design is a practice of creating those interfaces. Creating those interfaces in a way that it creates positive outcome for people who use it and businesses who build it. It's a process of enhancing the user's satisfaction with the product. When we talk about user experience, it is not a single dimensional attribute. Actually, it's a combination of multiple attributes. And Peter Marvel's UX honeycomb explains it very well. In order to make sure that user experience is valuable, we need to make sure that it is usable. One of the most basic requirements of good UX is that users should be able to use it, isn't it? Then it should be useful. The features and information that it provides, does it make sense to users? Does that help users to solve their problems? Then it should be desirable. Users should want to use it. They can use it, but do they want to use it? If a product design is intuitive and delight to use, users shall want to use it, and if it is not, then most functional and feature rich applications may not get adopted by users. Then it should be accessible. Users should be able to access it. It should be credible. Credibility is huge. If you don't trust a website, you will not give them your credit card information, right? And at the last, at the end, it should be findable. Finding the information you need is important. If you have to think too much about how you should find what you need, the UX is lacking. All these attributes contribute towards making user experience valuable for users. You can also say that it is a human-centered design approach that helps to build innovative digital products. There are three lenses, we can say. The first lens is desirability, means what is desirable from end user perspective. The UX process starts with this lens. The second lens is viability, means is it viable from business perspective? Will business build it? And the third lens is feasibility, means will it be technically feasible? Can we translate it into a reality using technology? All great products around us fulfill all these criteria. User experience innovation happens at the cross section of all three lenses. Now let us have a look at the disciplines of user experience design. The field of user experience design has its roots in human factors and ergonomics. a field that focused on the interaction between users and machines. It's a multidisciplinary profession, and this Venn diagram by Dan Saffer presents it very well. It explores the overlap between UX and other fields of design. You will see UX overlap with architecture, human factors, visual design, computer science, interaction design, and many other professions. That's why you find people from various professional backgrounds collaborate together to craft experiences. Now let's turn our attention to the elements of user experience. It is based on the excellent book written by Jesse James Gary, who is the leader or the founder of Adaptive Path, which is a UX studio in San Francisco. He wrote a book called Elements of User Experience in 2005, and it's a quite popular book in UX community. It provides a conceptual framework to understand and analyze the various planes of UX. Let's have a brief look at these planes. The first plane is the strategy plane. It defines the purpose of the product from business point of view as well as user's point of view. It asks some fundamental questions right in the beginning of the design process. It gets deeper to understand why business is building this product and why users would use it, how it fits into their lives. The strategy plane is about finding that sweet spot between what users want from us and what business needs to survive and grow further. So when you start any project, you always start with the strategy plane. The next plane is scope. The strategy is translated into scope through the creation of functional specifications. Means, what does the product offer? What is it able to do for people? What are we building and what we are not building? On the information side, scope takes the form of content requirement, means the information that needs to be provided or served through this product. The tricky part during the scope phase is prioritizing what features should be included as a scope of your project, and the insights that you have gathered during the strategy can help you to make that decision. The next plane is structure. Your product may have hundreds of functions, but if you don't organize them effectively, users may not be able to access and use them. The way you organize and categorize them dictates the structure of the application. It defines how people will navigate and access the information and function. Organizing, grouping, ordering and labeling of information and functions is also known as information architecture. It decides the destinations or sections your users will have when they visit your product. If the structure is not well defined, it can seriously impact the user experience. After structure, the next layer is skeleton. It defines how the application behaves or how it works when users interact with it. The skeleton plane defines how the functionality is represented in the form of layout and information, which is provided in the right hierarchy. It defines what components will enable users to use the application. It details out each and every UI control, its behavior and its flow. After the skeleton is defined, everyone involved in the project gets a complete vision of desired functioning of your product. and the topmost layer is surface. When you look at any interface, the first layer that we notice is the visual design layer, right? Which is surface that defines the look of the application. We immediately notice things such as color palette, typefaces, icons, images, and many other visual attributes. Many of you may think that design is all about creating a good looking visual wrapper around the backend functionalities. Well, that's not a right understanding. As Steve Jobs said, design is not about how it looks, it's about how it works. So, as we have seen, there are 5 planes of user experience: strategy, scope, structure, skeleton, and surface. Each plane is dependent on the plane below. So, the surface is dependent on the skeleton, which depends on structure, which depends on scope, and scope depends on the strategy. The user experience design process is all about ensuring that no aspect of user experience happens without your conscious and explicit intent. It's a journey, which starts when you have abstract requirements or vision, and ends when you have a very concrete product vision prototype which can be transformed into a real product. Well, after discussing what user experience design is, now let's get some understanding about the process of creating user experiences. This process is known as human centered design process or design thinking process. So, you know that design thinking is a creative problem solving method that can be applied to much wider range of problems, but it can also be applied to solve user experience problems and come up with innovative digital products. There are many variations of design process that you will find in the industry. Every design firm will have their own variation of the design process. However, the core philosophy of it remains same, whether it is followed by companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, or design group at Persistent. Human centered design process starts with people that you are designing for and ends with new solutions that are tailor made to suit their needs. You can certainly apply this methodology to design or conceptualize the hackathon solution in a human centric way. Let's get some deeper understanding about the process. Empathy or user research is the first phase. It's like standing in the shoes of others to understand their perspective better. It allows us to get deeper understanding about the people who are going to use the solution at the end of the day. Empathy is the foundation of a human centered design process. During empathy, we observe or engage with users and stakeholders to understand who are the end users of our product or service. What is their role? What is their educational background? What is their professional background? And what is their cultural background? Why do they want to use our product? What are their goals? How our product fits into their lives? In which scenarios will they interact with our product? What will make them successful with our product? What are their current pain points? These kinds of questions are answered through various qualitative and quantitative data gathering techniques such as user interviews, contextual inquiries, customer journey mapping, and many more. Insights gathered during empathy phase enable us to come up with innovations that are meaningful for users and create a positive outcome for businesses. The next phase is define, which is constructing a point of view. The goal of define phase is to craft a meaningful or actionable problem statement. During this phase, we analyze and synthesize the insights that we gathered during empathy phase. So during empathy, you connected with users and tried to understand them. You gathered lots of data, right? So during the define phase, you are trying to analyze that data and come up with UX strategy, which will further guide our design effort. If design really meant to be a problem solving activity, it's about identifying the right problem to solve first. And during define phase, we do that. The next phase is ideation, which focuses on going wide and exploring new possibilities to solve problems. Once a problem or opportunity has been clearly framed, we can start looking at the ways to solve it. We start generating as many ideas as possible. We brainstorm them with our teammates, and in other words, we ideate, we come up with ideas. Initially, during this stage, we should not reject anybody's idea, because they may seem very simple or basic, but any idea can be a seed to another idea. So pay close attention, examine every idea with a fresh perspective. Once you have loads of ideas, idea generation can be followed with idea synthesis. And during idea synthesis, you can actually use the three lenses that we saw. You can check through the lenses of desirability, feasibility and viability to choose the best ideas that you can prototype further. Various techniques like storyboarding, sketching, mind mapping can be used during ideation phase. The next phase is prototype, in which we bring ideas or visions into reality so that people can interact with it. Prototyping is all about visualizing our solutions. There are different techniques to design a prototype of an interactive digital product. It can start with rapid concept sketches and then take a shape of detailed wireframes. Wireframes are the block diagrams showing various components of screen. After wireframes are nailed down, we can create visual design mockups with perfect look and feel, or even HTML click-throughs that one can play with. No matter which technique you prefer, the essence of this step remains the same. Here we are trying to build the rough drafts of our solutions for realization of the product scope and vision, as well as for validation. Also, I would like to emphasize that design is an iterative process, and it is an iterative process because it is an exploratory process. There are various possibilities that you can try out during the design phase. Your prototype goes through various iterations before it gets finalized for production. Depending on the context, a prototype can be a real product. The next phase is test. The name of this stage says it all, but this is not about QA testing. In human-centered design process, we involve end users as a part of our design process. At this stage, we test our design prototypes with end users to get their feedback. We identify the issues they face when they interact with our prototypes. At this stage, these issues can be easily fixed, and we can make sure that product is user friendly in true sense. Even if our prototype fails, it's easy and cheap to fix it with prototypes. Testing gives us an opportunity to validate our solutions and make them better for users as well as businesses. Not testing your solution early may expose us to bigger risks later. Friends, till this point, we had a look at what is user experience design, why it is important. We also understood the elements of user experience design and the process to create user experiences. So, as I mentioned, I want to give you something which you can immediately absorb as a part of your hackathon project. That's why I want to share 21 design principles or practices that you can apply to your hackathon solution. Even if you apply some of them, I'm sure it's going to help you to make your solution better. Now I would like to clarify that there are hundreds of such principles, and whatever I am sharing right now are the selected few of my choice. So I hope you learn something and it will help you to make progress. The first principle is always start with the big why. What does it mean? Let me explain. Many projects start without a clear sense of problem statement. People get driven with features and technological possibilities and may not have clear understanding about what problem will that solve for businesses and for users. The key reason of failure of many software projects lies in the assumptions that the team makes without clear sense of problem identification. That's why in the beginning itself it's important that we ask few important questions. What problem does your product intend to solve? What should it accomplish for the businesses? How do you expect to differentiate your product from the competition? Why customers will use your product? The honest answers to all these questions will define the focus of the design further. The next principle is start with user needs. Friends, there is no one pasta that is right for everyone, right? Your logic might tell you to make the product as broad as possible to accommodate most of the people. The logic, however, it doesn't work. The best way to successfully design any product is to design it for specific types of individuals who have specific needs. When you don't define your target user segment, you may actually make it difficult to use or less valuable, less relevant for your end users. If I am designing an app for college students in Delhi between the age group 18 to 21, I need to clearly identify it in the first place. So the key is identify the specific target user segment. After identifying the target user segment, let's build a persona. In order to continue empathizing with our end users, we need to have their representation in front of us. And personas help us doing that. Personas is a very important and popular technique in the user experience design space. Basically, personas are end user models that represent groups of real users who have similar attributes. They are not actual people, but are synthesized directly from research and observations of right people. When you stay focused on your users throughout the design process, you have best chances of delivering a product that will meet their needs. A persona provides us that opportunity. It explains the most critical data about our users, such as users' background information, age, gender, location, expertise, experience, and the information that is relevant from product's perspective. Their goals, why do they need this system? What are their goals? Their pain points. What are their current pain points? How are they accomplishing the goals currently? What are the bottlenecks? Their wish list. In ideal world, what kind of things users expect from the system? Maybe a routine day in their lives or some background information which will help us to understand the larger context. Various people from your team can understand and visualize the end users when they have their personas in front of them. I would highly encourage all the teams to create basic persona or provisional personas for your solution. Provisional personas, because we are not going to conduct in-depth user interviews or in-depth research to come up with a persona. You can have even more than one personas who may need various things from your different things from your system. This exercise will at least make you take a step back and think and visualize the end users for whom you are creating this solution. The next principle is design for context. To create applications that are easy to use, it's important to understand the user and the context in which the app will be used. Understanding the context helps us to anticipate the use cases at the time of use. In traditional systems, the context of use did not change much. But in today's world, the world of smartphones, tablets, laptops and even smart TVs, all these devices are used by users in different contexts. Therefore, to design a more intelligent as well as meaningful experience, you need to understand the context so that you can provide relevant information or actions to users at the point of use. One effective way to do this is to write down or sketch out with doodles an important scenarios in which users will interact with your system. This will help you to understand what answers or what choices users expect from the product at that particular time. The next principle is follow users mental model. Imagine that you have never used any tablet and I just gave you one and told you that you can read books on it. Before you turn on the tablet, you have a model in your head, some thoughts about how reading a book on the tablet may feel like. You might have some assumptions or some ideas about how the book will look like on the screen, what things you will be able to do and how you will be able to do them. Things like turning a page or using a bookmark or maybe zooming out, zooming in. Well, this is your mental model about reading the book on a tablet, even if you have never done it before. Your mental model will be different than the inner mechanism or technological solution of the tablet or book reader application. Any machine has an inner mechanism of accomplishing its purpose. The way application actually works, we call it as implementation model. However, people have their own mental model which may not be the same as implementation model. When we are designing the interface, we need to align the interface layer with user's mental model and not with implementation model. People don't need to know how complex inner mechanism is in order to use it. The way Amazon Kindle and many more successful applications are designed, they clearly follow users' mental model and that's why they are easy to use. The next principle is organize, categorize and prioritize. It's about creating a structure of your application. We navigate through various types of organizational schemas: phone books, supermarket, television, programming guides, all use organization schemas. to facilitate access to information. Some schemas are easy to use where some are difficult to understand. UX people call it as an information architecture. In simple words, it is the creation of organizational and navigational schemas. A good information architecture allows people to move through content and functionalities effectively. You know, you have great information available on a certain website, but every time you look for it, you can't find it. Will that work for you? Information architecture plays a vital role in deciding findability of information and functions. Let's understand this with the help of couple of examples. WhatsApp has got just three categories, calls, chats and contacts. This classification is aligned with its user goals. Any new user when open WhatsApp immediately understands the main categories and can start using it without any support. This is because their team has spent conscious efforts to come up with this simple structure. Similarly, Twitter provides topic-based information architecture. It provides the structure which projects topics such as sports, music, news, entertainment upfront. It starts with search option. So if users don't know what exact category their topic belongs, they can start with search. To sum this up, I would suggest you to organize and categorize your set of information and functions, and you can try to align it to the way your users will think about it. This is a very interesting principle. This principle is known as the Pareto Principle. This is a very interesting principle. The principle has been named after Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto, who noted the 80-20 connection. It is also known as 80-20 rule or the law of the vital few. The 80-20 rule tells us that approximately 80% of the effects generated by any large system are caused by 20% of the variables in the system. It can be applied in varied capacities in different industries. In the context of user experience design, we can use it to extract important insights. Insights like who are the most important users who will be using the system 80% of the times, which most important 20% features 80% of the users will be using 80% of the time, which most important 20% sections 80% of the users will be visiting, and maybe which 20% components are creating 80% of the errors. 80-20 rule is useful for prioritizing, organizing and designing greater efficiencies in the system or in the design. The next principle is follow patterns. Design patterns are recurring solutions that solve common design problems. There are hundreds of design patterns that we already know. Patterns of selecting from the available choices, patterns of searching the information, patterns of submitting your payment information and many more. There are established patterns for different platforms as well as different domains. In addition to saving your time and effort, following established patterns makes your system easy to use. Since these patterns are already familiar to users, they don't need to learn them when they visit your product. Users can predict the behavior of these patterns easily, which makes the system more intuitive. There are many portals, for example uipatterns.com, where you can go and learn these patterns. I will be sharing few resources or few resource sites in this session as well. Look at this screen. You will see 12 circles and our brain processes them as 12 different units. But when we organize and group them, our brain now scans them as and understands them as 3 units instead of 12 different circles. This technique is also known as chunking, which is combining many units of information into a limited number of units or chunks, so that the information is easier to process and remember. Chunking information helps when people are required to recall and retain the information. This principle can be used effectively to simplify the presentation of data and making it easier for users to understand and process. The screenshot here demonstrates how this principle can be applied. The old data entry registration form from Yahoo, actually they created 4 logical chunks of the input fields, and it established a meaningful order which was pretty easier to deal with. The next principle is use user's language. Understanding and communicating in user's language is always critical. Users typically read the interface, understand it, and then they act upon it. If they can't understand your labels, feedback messages, and the overall language which is used, they might struggle to accomplish their tasks. Therefore, we must provide attention to the language that we use on the interface. If we use technical jargons, that will make system difficult to use. The user interface should provide information in user's language so that they can act upon it with confidence. The next best practice is around error messages. When users face a situation where system throws an error message, it's an opportunity to guide, handhold and help users. The system should not make users feel stupid. Instead, let them know that error has happened by providing a clear visual cue. Communicate it clearly and in user's language, and also provide a way to resolve it. It's an opportunity to educate users, right? I like the way Twitter has designed their error messages. It communicates the gist in a very friendly but yet engaging way. Now let's discuss one of the most important steps in the design process, which is prototyping. Actually, a prototype can be almost anything. It can be a series of sketches representing different screens to a pixel perfect visual mockup, or it can be an interactive HTML click through. The goal of the prototype is to give form to the product vision and test it before investing lots of time, effort and money into it. As design is an exploratory process, it is an iterative process, and prototypes goes through number of iterations based on the feedback that we get from stakeholders and end users. I would recommend that your team can try out creating a paper prototype of the desired solution. It's as straightforward as it sounds, simple screens that are drawn on paper to represent a digital interaction. If you want to create a digital wireframe designs, there are various tools to create digital wireframes, but you people can simply use Microsoft PowerPoint for wireframe creation if you want to do that. The next principle is test early, test often. Like prototyping, testing is also essential for identifying and resolving user experience issues. Usability testing evaluates a product or even service by testing it with representative users. Typically, during a test, participants try to complete key tasks, key activities, while observers watch, listen, and take notes. The goal is to identify bottlenecks, the goal is to identify UX problems and determine participants' satisfaction with the product using prototype. I suggest, if you are solutioning something for people around you, it will be a great idea to just take your paper prototypes to them and see if they understand it and find it helpful. I am sure you will get some interesting insights. Now we will discuss few important principles about visual design or the surface layer of user experience. The first overarching principle is the aesthetic usability effect, which talks about the importance of the surface layer. The aesthetic usability effect describes the phenomenon in which people perceive more aesthetic designs as easier to use than less aesthetic designs. The aesthetic usability effect has been observed in several experiments. Aesthetic designs look easier to use, and that's why people are willing to adopt them easily. Also, people use visual layer as a first indicator of trust. It determines the first impression about your product. So it's important that we understand how can we make sure that our interface doesn't have some basic aesthetic flaws. Well, for this I am going to share few simple visual design principles. The first principle is alignment. Sounds simple, right? If I ask you what's wrong on this slide here, you will immediately say that the frame looks tilted. It's not properly aligned to the ground. If you enter a room that has a calendar tilted like this, you can't stay without noticing it, isn't it? And maybe some of you will fix it right away. It comes very naturally to us as humans. Similarly, elements in the design should be aligned with one or more other elements. This creates a sense of unity, which contributes towards design's perceived stability. Stability is a very important attribute here. You can do one thing, try misaligning the elements at the visual layer and see if the user interface gives the feeling that the system is stable. You can see number of examples of how the principle of alignment has been followed on various interfaces. The next important principle is repetition. Repetition simply means the reusing of the same or similar elements throughout your design. Repetition of certain design elements in the design brings a clear sense of consistency and cohesiveness. Just observe Google material or Microsoft Metro UI guidelines. You will observe that visual attributes and standards for fonts, colors, icons, their dimensions and many other styles of interactive controls, spacings, paddings, everything is defined and they have repeated it. So, repetition principle plays a very important role in creating a visual language which can be then associated to reflect any particular brand. The next very important principle is proximity. In the 1920s, a group of psychologists in Germany developed a series of theories about visual perception. It describes how viewers group together different objects into a single coherent entity when objects are arranged together in a particular way. It is also known as Gestalt's theory. It suggests that people group objects together based on their proximity, similarity, continuation and closure. Here on this slide we are discussing the principle of proximity. It states that elements that are close together are perceived as a single group or are interpreted as related compared to the elements which are not close enough. If you observe the Google screenshot, you will notice that there are various subgroups on the screens. Subgroups such as the navigation, top stories, search bar, weather widget and action buttons. These groups are created using the principle of proximity. Elements that are close together are perceived as one group and users expect them to behave the same way. The next principle is contrast. Look at the screen. Can you read the text easily? Now it looks better, right? So this principle is contrast. Contrast between design elements can make a presentation stand out and get noticed. Contrast is something people are drawn to, people are attracted to. If one does it rightly, you won't notice it. But if we do it incorrectly, you will immediately catch that. Contrast attracts the eye, it adds visual interest to the composition. It can be in many different forms. Your first thought may be the color contrast, such as black and white or warm versus cool. There can be a contrast of size, shape, types and colors. Make sure that you attract users' attention to the element or information that is important from users' point of view or business's point of view. This is an example of contrast with color. Red color immediately attracts our attention as everything around it is in cool color palette or neutral color palette. This brings us to the next topic, which is colors. There are various types of color combination like analogous, which uses adjacent colors in the color wheel, or triadic, which comes from choosing the colors pointed by the equilateral triangle in the color wheel. These combinations are found and inspired by nature. For designers, most of the time color palette is provided by customer as their brand guidelines. But the way you use them as a part of your user interface design can make or break the experience. We know that colors can make designs visually interesting or more aesthetic. But if applied improperly, colors can seriously harm the form and function of the design. Would like to share a few guidelines around using colors. So use colors conservatively. Limit the palette to what the eye can process at a glance. Maximum, you can go for 3 to 4 colors apart from the images that you are using. Second point is use saturated colors when attracting attention is a priority, and use desaturated colors when performance and efficiency are priority. That means don't use pure colors like red, orange or blue in big patches, because if you do that, then it's always going to call for an attention. Use subtle shades of colors when your system is going to get used on day-to-day basis. Different cultures attach different meanings to the colors. Therefore, verify the meaning of a color and color combinations for a particular target audience prior to using that palette. Different cultures attach different meanings to the colors. Therefore, verify the meaning of colors and color combinations for particular group of users before you use them. This is just an example of how brand is reflected through a very powerful usage of colors. This brings us to the last principle that I wish to cover as a part of this session. Friends, we have learned number of design principles, but always remember that nothing can be as engaging as the data itself. We need to give importance, give prominence to the data, not to the elements around the data. End users don't want anything to come between them and the information that they are looking for. Considering this, design needs to celebrate the data irrespective of the platform. The example here demonstrates this principle very well. It's a minimalistic design of Myntra website which doesn't use fancy colors, typefaces or layouts. It provides complete focus on the actual product images. You can find many such examples if you observe around. These are some of the resources that you can check out. I am sure you will get to learn tons of useful patterns and components here. Friends, with this I would like to conclude this session. I hope you enjoyed the session and got some useful insights about user experience. I would like all of you to apply some of these techniques to your hackathon solution. So if you have any questions, any queries, any comments, feel free to reach out to me on my email address. You can also post them in the comment section below. So thank you very much for taking out time to join this session and wish you all the best for this nation building activity.